Hello and welcome to Innovation Women Speak. This is our new bi-weekly webinar series, and it's designed to educate, motivate, and promote our Innovation Women speakers. We have a full lineup of fabulous women planned for you all the way through May, so stay tuned for more great content coming your way. Tell your friends, all that great stuff. So before I introduce our guest speaker, I'd like to go over some logistics. The Bright Talk screen you're seeing has some tabs underneath the video window. There are tabs to enter your questions, to rate the webinar, and to answer our polls. We'll be polling you a few times throughout the webinar, so that's the tab you'll use to answer. So now we're going to introduce our guest for today, and Kim Menninger is going to be talking about using self-promotion to advance your career. As an executive and women's leadership development coach, Kim is particularly passionate about helping women in technology advance to higher levels of leadership. Kim has coached hundreds of professionals individually and in groups. She has also presented keynotes and delivered workshops to corporate and academic audiences, including Fidelity Investments, Pfizer, GE Healthcare, Johnson Controls, and more. Kim has recently launched 2 new women's leadership development programs. Advancing Women in Technology is aimed at helping mid to senior level women become more confident, strategic, and influential leaders. The Emerging Women Leaders program is targeted to women who have graduated in the last 10 years. It's focused on helping young women professionals develop early leadership skills and take ownership of their careers. Prior to coaching, Kim spent over 10 years in the high-tech industry, particularly at EMC Corporation. She has a BA in psychology and an MBA from Boston College and is an ICF, ACC certified and CCE board certified coach. Kim also holds a certificate in executive leadership from Cornell. She serves as chair of corporate partnerships for Witty Boston. She's the vice president of alumni initiatives for the Council of Women of Boston College and president of the Groton Business Association. Kim, with all of that big introduction, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Bobby. I am so excited to be here today, and I'm particularly thrilled to have an opportunity to talk about this topic, which, as you'll hear, is very important to me. Now, as we all know, there are a number of deep-rooted structural and systemic factors that influence the advancement of women leaders. And in my business, I don't focus on the macro-level systems, but rather at the individual level. So my goal is to help you strengthen your confidence, visibility, and influence so that you can best navigate your organizational power structures and address those internal obstacles that often hold us back. And one of the internal obstacles that I see most often undermining women's advancement is a reluctance to engage in self-promotion. Without a strategic effort to promote your value and to maximize your visibility, you simply won't gain access to important relationships and opportunities. So my goal for today is to help you shift your mindset on self-promotion, as well as to provide you with some actionable strategies that you can use when you leave here to expand your visibility. Now, I just want to make a quick note that the strategies that I'm going to be sharing today are primarily targeted at women who work in organizations rather than entrepreneurs. But that being said, many of the principles can easily be translated to entrepreneurship, and I'll be sure to point some of those out as we go through the slides. So let's take a quick look at the agenda. We're going to start by defining what it means to promote yourself. We'll take a look at why self-promotion is challenging for so many women. We'll discuss the benefits of self-promotion, which are greater than you might think. We'll talk about the keys to success, and then we're going to spend time on some specific strategies that you can use to help you more confidently and effectively promote your value. Before we jump in, I want to ask our first poll question, which is, Okay, I've got it open now. Do you strategically promote your value to others? So go ahead, you have about a minute or so to respond. Still time if you haven't. Okay, I can see the numbers going up. There's about 30 seconds left if you still want to participate. So there's a good mix here. I'm showing right now about 16. Oh, good. Okay, we have a couple always. All right, so we've got 2% always, 1% always, 15% often. Most of you are in the sometimes category, which is what I expected. About 25% of you are saying rarely, and a small percentage of you are saying never. So most of you are somewhere between rarely and often. So thank you for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about what it means to promote yourself. So for many women, this term conjures up a lot of discomfort and negativity. But the reality is that self-promotion is a critical skill that can be applied with authenticity and grace. As you're going to see in a moment, my definition does not include any of the obnoxious self-serving behaviors that we tend to associate with self-promotion. So hopefully, by the time you leave here today, you will move much more towards the often or always in the poll than the sometimes, rarely, or never. So at its simplest level, self-promotion is really about making sure that other people understand what you do and why you're here. So how many times have you walked past somebody in the hallway or gotten an email from someone and thought to yourself, gosh, I'm not really sure who that is or what they do? If other people are saying that about you, that's a missed opportunity. At an absolute minimum, everybody that you touch in some way should have an understanding of your role and how you fit into the organization. Self-promotion is about intentionally educating other people on your value. Companies don't hire people to fill headcount. They hire them to solve problems and to add real value. Beyond an understanding of your functional role, they need to understand your value to the organization. What happens because you're there? What doesn't happen because you're there? Self-promotion is about strategic relationship building. When you make deliberate investments in relationships, other people better understand your contribution. And what you're going to find is that the more relationships you have, the less you have to actively promote yourself because other people will experience your value firsthand. Self-promotion includes sharing your expertise to support others. Leveraging your skills and experience to help others is a powerful way to demonstrate your value. And letting other people know what you do and what you know allows them to be able to take advantage of your work. We all work on teams and we all bring special expertise to those teams. Our individual work and our team's work is much stronger when we can easily find resources that complement our skills and help us meet our needs. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, same principles apply. As you know, you need to be out there consistently building relationships and educating people on what you do. And as you develop those relationships, seek opportunities to share your value and use your expertise to help others. And that's going to allow them to experience your skills and capabilities directly. So we're going to look now at the challenges. When I talk to my clients, both men and women, 100% of them agree that self-promotion is critical to long-term success. But when I ask if they're doing it, the vast majority of them say no, or at least not as proactively as they would like to. So I'm going to launch our next poll question now, which is a variation of the last one. And that is, are you comfortable engaging in self-promotion efforts? I'm going to give you another minute or so to respond to that. Well, so far we've got 100% at rarely. Sometimes. Seeing about 25% of you know it often, which is good. And a few always, a few never. Most of you are in the sometimes category, which is, again, to be expected. And so once again, my goal is to help you to feel more comfortable. I'm hoping that when you leave here, you will feel like there are ways that you can do this much more authentically. We're going to talk now about why it's so difficult. Why is it so challenging for us to promote ourselves despite the fact that we know how important it is? And the primary reason that I hear is that it feels self-serving or insincere. Most people don't want to be seen as tooting their own horns. And incidentally, if you're concerned about that, you're highly unlikely to make that impression. It's the people that don't have those concerns, the people that lack that self-awareness that come across as self-serving. Another reason we don't promote ourselves is that women in particular would prefer to believe that our work will speak for itself. We believe that if we work hard and we produce high-quality work, we'll be rewarded accordingly. And that's what makes us great students when we're in school. We work hard, keep our heads down, follow the rules, and we outperform boys as a result. But unfortunately, those same rules don't apply in the workplace. We live in a very noisy world where it feels impossible to keep track of our own accomplishments, let alone everybody else's. We can't assume that the people who will influence our career paths are aware of all of the great contributions that we're making. Self-promotion can often feel like it goes against our natural tendencies as women. So generally speaking, we tend to be more focused on caring for others than ourselves, and we prefer to share credit than to have the spotlight. And finally, one of the key challenges that men and women face is that there's a lot of uncertainty about how to effectively promote ourselves. So we're going to get into that in a moment, but before we do, I want to take a quick look at the benefits of self-promotion. So some of these benefits will be obvious to you, but as I mentioned before, the benefits are greater than you might realize. So before we jump in, we're going to do one last poll question, and I'm going to ask you, do you believe that promoting your value helps other people? Awesome. So far, we've got 100% saying yes. That's great. All right. So we're not seeing any changes there. That's great. All of you believe that promoting yourself benefits others. Excellent. So we're going to start by looking at the benefits to yourself, and then we'll dig a little bit more deeply into how self-promotion benefits others. Oh, a couple of updates. Some of you say no, a small percentage of you say no, and then 15% of you are at about a not sure. So hopefully I can convince you in these next couple of slides. So let's start by taking a look at how self-promotion benefits you. So it establishes your significance. Again, you were hired to serve a particular purpose. Promoting your efforts makes clear your importance to your team and to the overall organization. Self-promotion differentiates you from your peers. So a lot of people that I talk to feel lost in the crowd. They're surrounded by smart, accomplished professionals, and that can make it hard to stand out. Promoting your unique accomplishments can help other people see what's special about you. Promoting your efforts helps you build your influence and impact. So when others understand your value and expertise, they see you as more credible. They're more likely to listen to your voice. They might start to include you in important discussions and give you access to new information. And this is something that I've seen firsthand in a client of mine. Because she's started promoting herself more actively, she's finding that people are engaging her differently. They're proactively seeking out her perspective on issues, and she's being invited to meetings that she's never been invited to before. And that is giving her the confidence to continue to promote herself. Self-promotion also increases your visibility while demonstrating important leadership traits. So when you promote yourself, you're naturally showcasing your communication skills, your influence abilities. And lastly, you're ensuring that other people understand your contributions and overall value, which positions you for advancement opportunities. So naturally, same benefits apply to entrepreneurs. When you promote your value publicly, you become recognized as an expert or a thought leader in your field. And often this will lead to new business opportunities or ways to increase your visibility, like writing or speaking invitations. So now we're going to move to how it benefits others. So most of us intuitively understand the benefits of self-promotion to ourselves, but what we don't often think about is how our self-promotion efforts actually benefit other people. I always say that self-promotion is not self-serving, it's a service to others. For one thing, sharing your successes with your managers helps them to stay on top of your work. As I mentioned before, everybody's busy and pulled in a lot of different directions. It's very difficult for managers to keep track of their team's individual activities. When you proactively share your contributions, you make it easier for your manager to manage his or her business. It's also important to remember that when you do well, your manager does well too. And that's true all the way up the line. Your success reflects well on your leadership teams, so share your accomplishments with them. This allows them to celebrate your success and to share it with their leaders as well. Promoting yourself helps your team. So if you manage a team, your reluctance to engage in self-promotion not only hurts you, it also hurts them. By not sharing your successes, you're depriving your team of important visibility and opportunity. And even if you don't manage a team, your accomplishments reflect well on your peer team. So if it helps you to feel like you're doing it for somebody else's benefit, remind yourself that your whole team wins when you promote your success. Another important benefit is that others can leverage your work. So when others know what you do and what you've accomplished, they can take advantage of those efforts. I'm sure many of you work for organizations that have very siloed departments where people have no idea what other groups are doing. There's so many redundancies in process and work activity. If you share a proven practice with another group, that prevents them from having to reinvent the wheel. And when you're willing to share your successes with others, including your expertise and your best practices, you establish yourself as a valuable resource. People start to see you as a go-to or a subject matter expert, which builds your credibility and trust while providing them with the help that they need. A note to entrepreneurs, one of the greatest mindset shifts that I experienced regarding self-promotion when I became a business owner is that if other people who could benefit from my work don't know what I do, I'm depriving them of an opportunity to seek my help. So when you share your value with others, you're not obligating them to work with you. You're simply providing them with information that allows them to make an educated decision about what would best meet their needs. So in order to effectively promote yourself, there's some important keys to success that I want to share with you. The first is self-awareness. To best achieve your goals, you need a deep understanding of who you are, your strengths, your interests, your goals. Self-promotion should be strategic. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is if you know what it is that you're hoping to gain from doing so. Knowing yourself and your goals allows you to decide what it is that you specifically want to share with others so that you can achieve that desired result. So for example, if your goal is to get promoted, you want to highlight the accomplishments that best position you for that bigger role. Confidence is another critical success factor. To fully embrace your strengths, you need to believe in yourself. Your confidence influences the way you carry yourself, how you communicate, even who you choose to engage. So if you struggle with confidence issues or with self-doubt, this is a really important area to work on. And unfortunately, we don't have time for me to go much more deeply into this topic, but this is an area that I speak on all the time. So if you want some additional support or resources, feel free to reach out to me offline. I'm happy to share some suggestions. Sometimes what it takes to promote yourself is just plain old courage. It means being willing to try something new. And I get that that isn't always easy, but growth doesn't happen when you're in your comfort zone. You need to be willing to stretch yourself. And you can start with small, lower risk steps that allow you to build that comfort level before you take bigger steps. For example, before you start sharing your successes with senior level leaders, get comfortable sharing them with your peers or your boss. Another important key to success is authenticity. So in anything you do, your ability to be true to yourself is critical. There are many different ways to promote yourself, as we'll see in a moment. So choose the ways that feel most authentic to you. Don't try to be someone that you're not. And finally, self-promotion takes consistency. This shouldn't be something that you do once a year during a performance review. Find repeatable and sustainable ways to build self-promotion into your regular routine. The more you do it, the more natural it'll become. All right, so we're going to look now at some actionable strategies that you can use to promote yourself. And as I said, authenticity is very important. So think about how to adapt these strategies to best fit your natural style and the work that you do. You might find that some of these don't work for you, and that's okay. The important thing is that you find an approach that feels right to you. So step one, before you can engage in self-promotion, is you have to recognize your own expertise. Take the time to reflect on what you do well. And some questions that you can ask yourself are, what parts of my work come easily to me? What do I understand really well? Where have I been given positive feedback? What do others come to me for? Many of us take for granted the things that we do well. We just don't see ourselves as special, or we downplay the significance of what we know. But what you do well is your unique value, and it's very important to understand and embrace those strengths. If you don't see your efforts as valuable, you're not going to feel that you have successes to promote. Or if you don't see your accomplishments as special, you're not going to have the confidence to promote them. So this might require a mindset shift. So spend some time on it. Don't rush this process. A pretty simple and painless way to promote yourself is by sharing regular updates with your manager. So I'll share a personal experience from back in my corporate days. At the end of every week, I would put together a bulleted list of key accomplishments from the week, and I'd send it to my manager as an FYI. This had the dual effect of keeping her updated on my work while also showcasing my value. If I didn't do that, she'd have no idea about all of the things that I was doing during the week. We were always moving in different directions. So she really appreciated this, and what she would often do is then take it and share it with her manager, which further amplified my visibility up the line. So this is a pretty simple practice that virtually anyone can adopt. Depending on your manager, you might want to have a conversation and ask what frequency and what format would work best for them, and then incorporate it into your regular routine. If your manager is not big on email, use one-on-ones to share the information. If you have regularly scheduled one-on-ones, make sure that you are using that time to highlight successes, not just discuss challenges. And if you don't have regular one-on-ones, request them. They're not just for status updates. They're a great forum for discussing your short and long-term goals. Depending on the kind of work that you do, you might even want to consider creating some type of a visual that you can print and share with others. You know, some people have dashboards, you might have some type of a list, but the most important thing is that it's clear and it's easy to read. So, and when you find a system that works, again, use it consistently. Speaking up at meetings is the next strategy. So most of us spend large percentages of our work time in meetings, and it can often feel like a frustrating use of time. But your active engagement in meetings can be a great way to promote yourself and your value. Rather than quietly multitasking in the back of the room, sit prominently and contribute your thoughts to the discussion. This is even more important when you're in meetings with senior level people or with people in cross-functional roles, as it's a great time to expand your visibility beyond your core team. And just as an aside, I want to share something with you that your lack of participation in meetings can also negatively affect how other people perceive you. So years ago, I traveled to a meeting with a partner, and I went with my boss, his boss, and our senior vice president. And I was co-leading the meeting because I was the lead on the partnership. And my boss's boss spoke quite a bit, but my direct boss didn't have a whole lot to contribute. So he sat quietly through most of the meeting. And after the meeting ended, our senior VP looked at my boss in front of all of us and said, "Why are you here? You contributed nothing to that conversation. You might as well have stayed home." That was a huge wake-up call for me. You might think that when you fly under the radar, nobody's paying attention, but I guarantee you there are people who are noticing, and they may not call you out as blatantly as my senior VP did, but they might be thinking it. So be strategic about how you engage in meetings. Some of you might be less comfortable speaking up at meetings, and I totally understand that. If you're an introvert in a room full of dominant voices, you might feel like there isn't space for you to speak. Or if you're newer to your role, you might feel that you have less to contribute. There are other ways that you can take advantage of meetings. And the first is to come to the meeting early so that you can talk one-on-one or in smaller groups with other people before the official meeting begins. That gives you a chance to build some connections and warm up for the meeting itself. And you might find that those pre-meeting conversations give you more confidence to speak up to the whole group. If at the end of the meeting you feel like you didn't get a chance to share your thoughts, stay afterwards and speak directly to the people that you wanted to talk to. If you're rushing out or they're rushing out, ask for time to follow up or just reach out to them later to continue the conversation. Another way to promote yourself in meetings, particularly if you don't feel like you're ready to contribute your thoughts directly, is to ask smart questions. The questions that you ask can establish you as somebody who's a strategic or an astute thinker. They give people a window into your thought process. And it's also likely, as they say, that if you have a question, other people probably do too. So people are going to appreciate your willingness to be their voice. And now a note to entrepreneurs. You may not attend internal meetings, but you have other opportunities to speak up and contribute to group discussions. So when you attend workshops or panel discussions, find opportunities to chime in and share your perspective with the group. And if you hear someone say something that resonates with you or that you can help with, approach them after the event and introduce yourself and create opportunities to continue that discussion at a later time. A great way to promote your value is to offer to help others. If you're an expert in a particular subject matter or you have a specialized skill set, be willing to proactively share your expertise with other people. So for example, if you notice that other people are always coming up to you with questions about a certain topic, schedule an informal lunch and learn and give people a high-level overview, or put together a cheat sheet and share it with your teams. It's important to remember that promoting your strengths isn't about showcasing how wonderful you are. It's about educating people about what you bring to the table. When you have information that other people can use and you're willing to share that, your value increases in ways that are beneficial to you and them. If you're working on something that would be beneficial to another group, ask that group's manager if it might be helpful for you to present an overview at their next team meeting. Think about the groups around the organization that could benefit from your work but may not be aware of what you're doing. And then proactively reach out to them to educate them, share updates. You can also help by mentoring other people in your organization. So offer to help new or younger colleagues build new skills or develop in their roles. This is a great way to demonstrate your leadership potential, and you'll also build strong allies that will champion you as they grow in the organization. Years ago, I managed a team of young professionals who were just getting started in their careers, and this was my first opportunity to mentor and develop others. And since then, many of the more than 40 or 50 people that I managed have risen to senior level leadership roles, and they've been great partners and advocates of my work over the years. As an entrepreneur, you can use your skills and expertise to help others as well. So offer high-value complementary workshops or webinars on a topic where you have expertise, or write blog posts that deliver value to your community, or invite potential clients to complimentary sessions, not just consultations, where you can allow them to experience you and your work firsthand. So we've talked a bit already about the importance of building strategic relationships. As they say, it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. Right? When you invest in influential relationships, you give other people an opportunity to learn more about your role, your work, and the value that you offer. Whether you are an entry-level individual contributor or you're a senior-level executive, you have value to offer in a relationship. And this is one of the biggest objections that I hear from people when I encourage them to build relationships is people don't want to waste other people's time. They feel like other people are more important, have more important things to do. They're not going to take time out of their busy day. But I guarantee you, we can all offer value, no matter where we sit in an organization and what role we perform. And here are just some of the things that you can offer. One is a new perspective. So senior level leaders don't have the same frontline perspective that people who are closer to the business have. You can share your thoughts and ideas, which can be very valuable to somebody at a higher level. And I recently was working with a mid-level woman who reached out to her new CEO to introduce herself and to share her perspective on the work that her group was doing. And as part of that discussion, she offered to support him in his transition in whatever way would be helpful to him. He was so grateful for this that he asked her to schedule quarterly meetings with him to keep that conversation going. You may be able to offer new resources. Do you have a friend that would be a perfect fit for an open position? Or as we were just talking about, do you use a tool or a process that would be helpful to another group? Share that information. And if you can teach that person how to use it, that's even better. Opportunities for mentorship. So many people in higher level roles recognize they didn't get there on their own, and they want to help other people. Asking for career advice or guidance on how to address certain situations can be a great way to build relationships, and it gives them a chance to give back. I used to do this all the time in my corporate life. I would see somebody giving an interesting presentation or make an interesting comment, and I would reach out directly and ask for a brief meeting. I would say, hey, I was really interested in what you had to say. Can we continue that conversation? And then would just ask them for more information. I'd ask them about their career path, what advice they might have. Every single person said yes, and every single person said thank you. They were so flattered by my interest. People love to talk about themselves. As long as you're respectful of their time and you prepare an agenda that's appropriate for the discussion, I guarantee you most people will be happy to engage with you. And opportunities for goal alignment. Some organizations are better than others at aligning cross-functional goals. Whether or not this is a clearly defined process where you work, it's really helpful to sit down with key stakeholders and other people that you work with to talk through how to best work together to achieve common goals. So share your own goals and drivers and ask them for theirs. The more that you understand their perspective, the stronger that connection will be and the more easily you'll be able to achieve your goals. And you'll get credit for taking the initiative. Often when we think about relationship building, we tend to focus on higher level relationships, but it's really important to have a diverse network at all levels of the organization. Remember, not every influencer is a senior level executive. Some of the most powerful people in any organization are the admins. They have access to everything, people, information, resources, so don't think too narrowly. And focus on your peers too. Cross-functional or horizontal relationships can be critical when you're trying to build visibility and influence. And I'm sure it goes without saying that entrepreneurs have a great opportunity to build strategic relationships as well. Keep in mind that you can also benefit from diverse relationships. So naturally, you're going to want to target potential clients, but it can also be very valuable to build relationships with other service providers in your ecosystem. So consider reaching out to people who offer complementary services to yours. That has been one of the biggest ways that I've grown my business is by partnering with people or groups that serve the same market as mine in different ways. And a great way to build relationships is to volunteer for cross-functional projects. It's a great opportunity to showcase your value outside of your own team. It's also a good way to expand your perspective on what's going on in the larger organization, which can increase your value to the group. So you might want to start by talking to your manager about these types of opportunities. He or she may be involved in a project that they would be happy to offload to you. Or if you're aware of particular projects that interest you, ask your manager for help with becoming more involved. In addition to your manager, you could also talk to other people in the organization who are spearheading projects. So ask for time to discuss the goals and how you can best support their efforts. If you're not aware of any projects, but you see a specific need, consider taking the initiative to lead your own effort. And keep in mind that not all cross-functional projects need to be directly related to your work. Employee resource groups like women's leadership groups can be a great opportunity to build relationships and demonstrate your value. They're also a great way to develop new leadership skills, particularly if you don't have an opportunity to do that in your regular job. In my corporate life, I represented my functional group in a task force that was set up to focus on improving the results of the annual satisfaction survey. And what this allowed me to do was to work closely with a lot of other people from different groups that I never would have otherwise met. And one of the key outcomes of the survey was that there was a lack of communication within our department. And our department was global and had recently expanded due to an acquisition. So there were a lot of people who were feeling left out and didn't feel a sense of connection. So what I did was I offered to write a monthly newsletter. And in it, I highlighted some of the key initiatives that were going on in other parts of the group, and I profiled different members of the group. And it proved to be a hugely beneficial opportunity to connect with people and to really increase my visibility. And as a result of that effort, I was able to connect with senior level leaders who then promoted me to a bigger position. So be on the lookout for new ways to expand your reach. And again, if there isn't something that's already in place, think about starting one on your own. Now, entrepreneurs and women who work in organizations can all benefit from becoming more involved in external, professional, and industry groups. There are a number of groups where you can connect with people in your field or your target market. But I would remind you that quality is more important than quantity. So don't feel pressure to join every relevant group out there. It's better if you can find one or two that best resonate with you and then find ways to consistently engage in those. If possible, consider joining the leadership team, as that's a great way to use and grow your skills, to raise your visibility, and to best connect with other people. And then finally, self-promotion opportunities don't have to happen formally. Casual meetings are a huge missed opportunity for professionals. So for example, think about a time when you found yourself in the elevator or the break room with a senior level leader who asked you how you're doing, right? The typical response is to say, fine, thanks, how are you? But instead of responding in that boring, predictable way, use that opportunity to share a recent win or an exciting project that you're working on. And summarize it in 30 to 60 seconds, and you're likely going to grab that person's attention. It's a great way to not only showcase your value, but to make yourself much more memorable. Another opportunity that many people don't take advantage of is travel. When you're traveling with colleagues, there are often opportunities for downtime or social activities. So rather than sleeping in the morning, ask somebody that you don't know well to meet you for breakfast. Or see if you can sit next to someone on the plane so that you have a chance to better talk. Or if you're visiting another office for a meeting, see if you can go a day early or stay a day later and schedule meetings with people in that office to get to know them better. The easiest way to take advantage of these informal opportunities, and one that is highly underutilized, is lunchtime during the regular workday. Women in particular tend to use lunch breaks to catch up on work or personal responsibilities. So if it's unrealistic to eat lunch with your coworkers every day, find a sustainable way to do that. For example, commit to eating lunch with somebody new every Friday or 2 to 3 times a month. Lunch meetings tend to be much less formal, and they give you a great opportunity to talk about what you do and what you're working on. All right, so now I want to see if we have any questions. See.
Hi, Kim. This is Bobby, and well, first off, that was awesome. I just want to give the audience a chance to put their questions in, but we actually have a few questions for you already, and one of the questions is, will we have access to these slides afterwards? And the answer is yes. We'll be sending out a link from Innovation Women to all of the people who have registered for this, and also the replay will be available. So we have that. I do have some additional questions while other people are putting in their questions. All you have to do is tap the tab that allows you to ask questions. So the first question that I have for you, Kim, is what advice do you have for someone who works remotely and doesn't have as much face time?
That's a really important question because a lot of people work remotely today, or they work in distributed environments where they don't necessarily see their boss or their senior leadership team on a regular basis. This really requires that you be much more strategic and conscientious about seeking out opportunities to promote yourself. So certainly some of the strategies that I talked about in terms of keeping your boss updated by sending the regular emails or engaging in one-on-ones are a particularly important strategy when you don't have those opportunities to simply bump into each other in the hallway. Another way to think about it too is to be more deliberate about how you build your network. So again, if you can't bump into somebody in the hallways organically, set up virtual coffees with people by video. And you can use Zoom or FaceTime or whatever you use, and that can be a great way to connect with people when you can't do it face-to-face. Everybody has 15 minutes to take a coffee break during the day. So, reach out to them, tell them that you want to have a conversation about what your joint goals are and how you can work together more effectively, and just sit down and chat face-to-face via video. And also, again, use those travel opportunities, right? So if you are working remotely and most of your team works in one office, see if you can travel there once a quarter or once a month, whatever frequency makes sense, so that you do have a chance to have some face time. And when you're there, try to maximize that opportunity by meeting in person with as many people as you can.
Okay, that's great. And actually, this is answering a housekeeping question. We had a couple people who said that they were having some sound issues over the course of the session, and we were monitoring on another line, and it sounded like everything is fine. So there wasn't any technical issues with the sound on our end, but you will be able to hear the whole thing in the replay if you weren't able to hear it locally. Also, I generally recommend that people dial in versus their computers just as a way to make sure you're getting the best sound quality. We do have another question that came up here. How do I handle self-promotion if my manager is threatened by me?
This is a question that I get a lot because it is a tricky one to navigate. But hopefully what you've seen through this presentation is that what I'm proposing is to do this in a very organic and service-oriented way. So you're not going to threaten people as much when you're using your skills and expertise to educate others, to help other people do their work. So that right there can help minimize some tension with your boss. But there are definitely some insecure bosses out there, and it can be helpful to have a conversation with them about what you're trying to do. If you are out there building relationships with their boss or with other senior level leaders around them, they might start to get uncomfortable with that. So bring them into the conversation, let them in on your strategy, and ask for their support. If they know what you're trying to do, they may be willing to facilitate those introductions and to help you to have those conversations. But if it's perceived by them as something that you're doing going around them, then that's definitely going to feel like much more of a threat. And, to the extent possible, share credit with your boss. I know this is hard to do if you have an unsupportive boss or one that's not necessarily the most competent, but give credit where credit is due. and make sure that you are providing your boss with as much positive attribution as possible. They are supporting you in some way. And if they're not, if you truly have a toxic boss that's making your life miserable, then I would highly recommend that you think about making a change, because that person's going to be an obstacle in a lot of different ways for a long time if you don't get out of that situation. And that also reinforces the importance of building your own relationships, because you don't want to be at the mercy of your boss for how others perceive you and how well you're championed within the organization. If you do have a difficult relationship with your boss, you really should be out there trying to build your own network and get your own access to the kinds of visibility that you're looking for.
That's great. I'm assuming a lot of these strategies are in your self-promotion cheat sheet, so people can download that on the attachments, right?
Yes, thank you for saying that. If you go to the attachments and links, you will see that there is a Word document that has a lot of what I shared in the presentation and gives you some space to use it as a cheat sheet if you want to take some notes, or just have it handy so that you can refer back to it when you're thinking about your own self-promotion strategy.
Great. So the next question is, do you have a recommended strategy on self-promotion via social media?
So that's a very good question, and it's unfortunately not a simple answer in that every company has its own policies on how you use social media. So if you work for some of the more highly regulated industries or companies, like I see this a lot in financial services, companies have a lot tighter hold on what you can do and how you promote yourself through social media. So I would highly recommend that you check into that and just see what is acceptable use for your role. But generally speaking, I think that anything that you can do to be out there showing thought leadership, sharing either things that you've written yourself or things that you've read that really emphasize your expertise and add to the conversation can be a great way to raise your visibility. I don't personally write a lot myself. I just don't have a lot of time to, but I'm always out there reading other people's content, and I share it with my audience on a regular basis because I think that it's a great way to stay connected. So anything that you have expertise in that you want to put out there to the larger community is a great step. And even before that, just making sure that you're connecting. Just maximize your connections with people. Anytime I meet somebody new, anybody that I would accept a business card from, I connect with on LinkedIn. That's my virtual Rolodex. I have over 3,000 connections because that's where I expect to be able to find people. I know that a business card is going to be outdated a year from now. So really make sure that you're maximizing your social media connections and platforms so that you're able to maintain that community.
So the next question is, as an entrepreneur, I often realize after the fact that I talk a lot about my company's success, but I don't really share anything about me as a co-founder. Would you recommend that I strive to incorporate my specific skills and successes in those conversations, or are we one and the same?
That's a really good question. So I think that I can't answer whether you're one and the same just because I don't know enough about you and your company, but I do think that there's a lot of value to personalizing your experience. And so as you're talking about your company, use storytelling to share how you got there. What is it that you are most passionate about? What are the ways in which you personally are moving forward on the goals that you've established for the company? You know, I think I say this often when talking about resumes. You really need to be the star of your own show. And not to the extent that you're tooting your own horn or doing something obnoxious, but I think most of us are overly humble. We don't do a good enough job of spotlighting our own role and our successes. It's okay to say I every now and then. It's okay to talk about yourself and how you got here and what you personally contribute. So I would recommend taking a look at how you're talking about your company and whether there are ways in which you can weave in your own story.
The next question is, how do you speak up in a meeting in a large group when everyone else seems to be speaking?
That is a very difficult, that's a very difficult scenario, especially for introverts who like to think before they speak. You know, I hear a lot that people are saying, you know, I'm still processing and the conversation has already moved on to something else, right? Or there are so many voices, it's really hard to speak up. I would say do the best you can, because you cannot control the dominant voices that are in the room. I would be actively looking for those opportunities, and don't be afraid to say, excuse me. Don't be afraid to try to squeeze in, because no one's going to actively call you out and say, did you have something that you wanted to contribute? You really have to elbow your way in sometimes. And as long as you do that respectfully, it's okay. And if you do feel like the conversation passed you by and there's a point that you want to make about something that happened a few minutes ago, you can always say, let's go back to this for a moment. I'd like to add to that. At the end of the conversation, like I said earlier, if you feel like you haven't had an opportunity to say what you want to say or to share your perspective on things, talk to people one-on-one. You know, either request a small offline meeting where you can talk to key people, or just share your thoughts in an email where you may have time to process and digest a little bit more effectively. Don't try to force fit yourself into somebody else's world. Look for ways that work for you. And again, that means showing up early so that you could talk to people ahead of the meeting, staying later. I think that's where authenticity comes into the mix too.
Okay. The next question is, my boss is Japanese and their culture is all about humbleness. Do you think this self-promoting is still good for me?
I think it's even more important that you do it from a place of service to others as opposed to self-interest, right? So when you can be out there using your skills and expertise to help other people do their jobs more effectively, I would think that would be very consistent with a culture that's more collaborative and community-oriented.
Okay. The next question is, does the timesheet that the company asks employees to submit weekly or daily work in lieu of weekly reports, the bullet point list that you recommended to provide the manager with?
In the absence of more information, I'm going to say no, because I think the timesheet will probably say that you were there, but it's not going to say what you were doing. And the point here is that you give people visibility into the specific successes and accomplishments that you're achieving. So if you have a timesheet that you have to do that, but do this in addition to, so that you give people a chance to see measurable contributions.
And the next question is, my boss is always so busy. How do I get his or her attention so that I can better promote myself?
That's a tough one too. And again, especially if you don't work in the office with your boss, or your boss manages a huge team and you're one of many that are vying for their attention, I would say that it's even more important that you seek opportunities for one-on-ones. And you may find that your manager reschedules them from time to time, but make sure they understand what's in it for them, right? This isn't just about them meeting your needs. You want to help them to do their job more effectively too. And by having that consistent communication, you're able to understand what their priorities are, how to prioritize your work accordingly, how to best collaborate together. So I would position it that way and just really make sure that you are managing them. That's a manager's job. A manager's job is to be communicating with you. Not everybody does it effectively, so don't rely on them to establish that rhythm for you. You need to drive that.
Okay. And what do I do if someone else takes credit for my work?
This is another one that we see a lot. And so I will say that before that even happens, you have an opportunity to prevent that by being proactive about how you promote yourself. right? So if you are already out there actively talking about what you're doing and people are aware of your contributions, there's a much lower risk that someone else is going to be able to swoop in and take credit for what you're doing. If it does happen, though, in general, I recommend giving people the benefit of the doubt. Most people aren't trying to be a jerk. I know that there are some that are, but if generally speaking you have a positive relationship with that person, talk to them one-on-one, find out what's going on, let them know that that was something that disappointed you or that frustrated you, and ask if there is something that you can do together. I would also say that it can be helpful to have allies. So if there's a particular person that's guilty of swooping in and taking credit for other people's work, if you have allies that you work with to protect each other from that, then, as it's happening and you notice that that person is taking credit for your friend's work, you can be the one to speak up and vice versa, so that you're not the one who always has to protect your own work. You've got a team of people that are all looking out for each other.
Okay, and I think our last question as we're getting toward the end here is, Kim, what was your biggest challenge in promoting yourself? I'm going to ask one more question after this one. So what was your biggest challenge in promoting yourself, Kim?
Oh, that sounds hard to think about that. I think politics are always a challenge. You really have to understand the landscape that you operate in to know the personality types around you and where you may, where there may be some landmines that you might inadvertently step in. So, for me, what I shared with you in terms of that approach to helping others was the way that I consistently promoted myself in my organization. So I'm being very authentic with you in what I'm sharing, and I never got the sense that people felt threatened by it or that I was overstepping in some way. I think people really appreciated it. There were probably ways in which I could have done it a little bit more directly with certain people. So in hindsight, maybe reading the room a little bit more carefully and politically knowing who I needed to spend more time with, or maybe being a little bit more overt in some situations. But again, the main theme here is that you do this in a way that feels authentic to you. So don't try to be someone that you're not.
So I couldn't resist fitting in one more question, because this is a great follow-up question to one of the earlier questions, which was, what do I do if someone takes credit for my work? So in this case, the follow-up question is, what if your boss takes credit for your work?
Yeah, that's another tough one too. And so this is going to happen, and I'm sure most of us have experienced this from time to time. If it's a pattern, then it's something that you really should address with your boss and have that uncomfortable conversation. It's not easy to do, but you may want to have a conversation where you say, I'd really appreciate an opportunity to present this to this team, or I'd really like to take the lead on something, where you're getting the visibility by being the voice of that effort. And when you do that, then you have an opportunity to weave those I stories into it, right? To say, here's what I've done, or here's how I've contributed to this project. If you can really start to be proactive about how you're getting yourself out there, you can work around some of the people that are trying to either deliberately or maybe unknowingly sabotage your efforts or undermine your self-promotion. So, if it may require an even more direct conversation with your boss. You have to decide whether or not that's politically feasible. But I think if you look for ways to be the person that shares the story, that you will get credit just by virtue of being the voice of the effort.
Great. That is so helpful. Thank you so much, Kim. And guests, we would love any feedback on this webinar. Our next Innovation Women webinar is going to be a speech writing webinar. Sherry Sagnor is going to be joining us. She's the President and Chief Speechwriter at Smart Speeches. This event will be on February 6th. Again, a lunch and learn if you're East Coast time, 12 noon to 1 p.m. And there is a link to register on the tab that's called Attachments and Links. We're trying to make it easy for you to join us. And again, thank you so much, Kim. That was incredibly helpful. And this concludes today's Innovation Women webinar, and we will see you in just a couple of weeks. Thanks again.